Meltzer would say, officially, the company has dropped the TNA name for Impact Wrestling, starting with the March 9th show. Bruce Prichard made the announcement during the latest reboot show. You know, I guess if we're sort of doing a restart, clicking Control-Alt-Delete on the promotion, maybe this makes sense. What did you think of that? Let's just do away with the TNA name completely.
I thought it was smart. I thought that if you wanted to move forward, don't dwell on the past, and let's get beyond it. They wanted me to, come out and TNA's dead and the future is now. So forget about TNA and here's what we're going to do moving forward.
So there's another thing we should at least address. When you come back, you have said some things on your podcasts that maybe rub some people the wrong way. And I know we've told this story before, but I think it bears repeating because very quickly, once you're on site and you're in Florida and you're ready to get going doing your thing, you bump into, a now friend of the show, but maybe at that time you weren't so sure.
Well, look, I wasn't really concerned about some of the things that I said on the show in regard to TNA. And up until this point, my only exposure outside to anybody in the business was at various conventions and what have you. And usually that's a happy, joy situation. And you say hello and you move on. You're referring to the Conan deal. And, I had told the story about Conan in WWE where I didn't know who he was as K-Dog and conversation that we had, and it got blown up out of proportion. And when Conan came in that night, I was in the lobby and Jeff's like, oh, hey, Conan, here's Bruce. Bruce? He says, fuck him. Conan didn't want to have anything to do with me. And I said hello. And, but long and short of it, Conan and I, man, it was like we squashed our beef. There is no heat whatsoever. I like the hell out of Conan, and I hope he likes the hell out of me because I think that he's a talented guy. And we just, it was like, get it out, move on, and misunderstanding and move forward. Amazing what happens when you talk to people. But it was much ado about nothing, and we moved on. If anything, I thought that, Jeff would be a little bit like, hey, Bruce, what the hell on some things. There was none of that. I think because, all that happened.
Right.
It's like, hey, why the hell did you tell him that? Well, because it happened. Yeah, okay. And then there's nowhere to go.
Right.
Like Abyss had called me, and how he felt. And I said, well, Chris, that's what I'd heard, and that's what people felt, and got it all straightened out, moved on from there. It's like, oh, okay. But why'd you say it? Well, because other people were saying it. This is what happened. This is the thought process at the time.
I just want to add some context too. We should, it almost seems silly to even say now, given the context of everything that's happening and has happened and all that. But back then you were pretty steadfast in, oh yeah, I'm done with wrestling. I'll never do anything with wrestling again. You felt like maybe wrestling had turned its back on you and you had turned your back on it. And, this is, I'm just doing whatever here, but you were all out of fucks to give on the podcast. Fair to say?
I would say it like this, in that I reached a point in my life of I have nothing to lose. And here are my stories. Here's my life. And you helped in that tremendously, in that you have stories to tell. You have a wealth of history that is entertaining. So you thought, and it was like, okay, I just reached the point of, well, you know what? There's no reason to think that I'm ever going to go back to that side of the business.
Right.
That let's go be the entertainer, and let's go do this whole new gig, a new lifestyle. And I embraced that and jumped into it from the standpoint of there's nothing else to lose. And as long as I'm telling my stories from my point of view, then there's nobody can call me on that.
Yeah.
And like I used to say to you about, certain things about times with Vince and Pat, where it's like, hey man, there's only three guys that know the truth. And unfortunately one of them's not here anymore and the other one's not talking.
Right.
So I had a very unique perspective in that regard. And once you embrace that and accept that, I was able to, okay, man, yeah, let's tell stories. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to go out and be a tell-all or anything like that. In some cases, I think that there are those who would view what we did as that, but all it was explaining a lot of the situations that were public, and I normally don't discuss anything that isn't public or that hasn't been made public to give the other side of it, if you will.